The history of the Parthenon is a story that stretches back over 2.5 millennia, a tale of art, religion, politics, and resilience. It is a monument that has stood the test of time, surviving wars, invasions, and even explosions. To understand the Parthenon, we must begin in the 5th century BCE, during the height of Athenian power, and trace its journey through the ages. Let us start with its origins, its purpose, and the people who built it. The Parthenon was constructed between 447 and 432 BCE, during the Golden Age of Athens, under the leadership of the statesman Pericles. This was a time when Athens was at the peak of its cultural, political, and military power. The city had recently emerged victorious from the Persian Wars, a series of conflicts that had seen the Greeks unite to repel the invading forces of the Persian Empire. The most famous of these battles were Marathon in 490 BCE, where the Athenians defeated the Persians against overwhelming odds, and Salamis in 480 BCE, where the Greek navy, led by Athens, destroyed the Persian fleet. These victories not only secured Athens' independence but also established it as the dominant power in the Greek world. In the aftermath of these wars, Athens formed the Delian League, an alliance of Greek city-states, ostensibly to protect against further Persian aggression. However, over time, Athens transformed this league into an empire, using the funds contributed by its allies to rebuild and beautify the city. It was in this context that Pericles proposed the construction of the Parthenon, a temple dedicated to Athena Parthenos, the patron goddess of Athens. The temple was to be the centerpiece of the Acropolis, the sacred hill that had been the heart of the city since the Bronze Age. The Acropolis had been a site of worship for centuries before the Parthenon was built. It had been home to earlier temples, including the older Parthenon, which was destroyed by the Persians during their sack of Athens in 480 BCE. The decision to build a new, grander temple on the same site was both a religious and political statement. It was a way for Athens to assert its dominance and to honor the goddess who had, according to legend, granted the city its name and protection. The construction of the Parthenon was overseen by the architects Ictinus and Callicrates, and the sculptor Phidias, who was also responsible for the statue of Athena Parthenos that would stand inside the temple. The building was designed in the Doric order, the simplest and most austere of the Greek architectural styles, but it also incorporated elements of the Ionic order, such as the continuous frieze that ran around the inner chamber. This blending of styles was unusual and reflected the innovative spirit of the Athenian architects. The Parthenon was built using Pentelic marble, quarried from Mount Pentelicus, about 16 kilometers northeast of Athens. This marble was renowned for its pure white color and fine grain, but it also had a unique property: over time, it would develop a golden patina when exposed to the air. This meant that the Parthenon, even in its early years, would have had a warm, golden glow, especially at sunrise and sunset. The precision of the construction was extraordinary. The columns were not straight but slightly curved, a technique known as entasis, which created an optical illusion of perfect straightness. The floor of the temple was also slightly convex, allowing rainwater to drain away. The Parthenon was not just a temple, it was also a treasury. The inner chamber, or cellar, housed not only the statue of Athena but also the vast wealth of the Delian League. The statue itself was a masterpiece of chryselephantine sculpture, made of gold and ivory. It stood over 12 meters tall and depicted Athena in full armor, holding a statue of Nike, the goddess of victory, in her right hand. The base of the statue was decorated with scenes from Greek mythology, including the birth of Pandora, the first woman. The exterior of the Parthenon was adorned with sculptural decorations that told stories from Greek mythology and celebrated the city of Athens. The metopes, or rectangular panels, on the outer frieze depicted scenes from the Gigantomachy, the battle between the gods and the giants, as well as the Centauromachy, the fight between the Lapiths and the Centaurs. These scenes were symbolic of the triumph of civilization over barbarism, a theme that would have resonated with the Athenians, who saw themselves as the defenders of Greek culture. The pediments, or triangular sections at the ends of the temple, were filled with larger-than-life sculptures. The east pediment depicted the birth of Athena, who, according to myth, sprang fully armed from the head of her father, Zeus. The west pediment showed the contest between Athena and Poseidon for the patronage of Athens. According to legend, the two gods competed to see who could offer the city the most valuable gift. Poseidon struck the ground with his trident, creating a spring of salt water, while Athena planted an olive tree, which provided wood, oil, and food. The Athenians chose Athena as their patron, and the city was named in her honor. The most famous of the Parthenon's sculptures, however, is the continuous frieze that ran around the inner chamber. This frieze depicted the Panathenaic procession, a festival held every 4 years in honor of Athena. The procession began in the city and wound its way up to the Acropolis, where a new peplos, or robe, was presented to the statue of Athena. The frieze shows a vivid and detailed portrayal of this event, with hundreds of figures, including horsemen, charioteers, musicians, and sacrificial animals. It is a celebration of Athenian civic pride and religious devotion. The Parthenon stood as a symbol of Athenian power and piety for nearly 1,000 years. However, its history did not end with the fall of ancient Greece. In the 5th century CE, as Christianity spread throughout the Roman Empire, the Parthenon was converted into a church dedicated to the Virgin Mary. The statue of Athena was removed, and many of the pagan sculptures were defaced or destroyed. The temple's orientation was also changed, with the entrance moved to the west end, and an apse added to the east end. Despite these changes, much of the original structure remained intact. In the 15th century, Athens fell to the Ottoman Turks, and the Parthenon was converted once again, this time into a mosque. A minaret was added to the southwest corner, and the interior was modified to accommodate Islamic worship. The Ottomans also used the Parthenon as a gunpowder magazine, a decision that would have devastating consequences. In 1687, during the Great Turkish War, the Venetians, under the command of General Francesco Morosini, laid siege to Athens. On September 26, a Venetian mortar shell struck the Parthenon, igniting the gunpowder stored inside. The resulting explosion caused massive damage, blowing out the central portion of the building and destroying many of the remaining sculptures. The Parthenon, which had survived for over 2,000 years, was now a ruin. In the centuries that followed, the Parthenon became a symbol of the classical past, inspiring artists, architects, and writers. It also became a target for looters. The most famous of these was Lord Elgin, the British ambassador to the Ottoman Empire, who, between 1801 and 1805, removed many of the surviving sculptures, including most of the frieze, metopes, and pedimental figures. These sculptures, now known as the Elgin marbles, were shipped to Britain and eventually sold to the British Museum, where they remain to this day. The removal of the marbles has been a source of controversy ever since, with many Greeks calling for their return. Despite the damage and loss, the Parthenon remains one of the most iconic and influential buildings in the world. It is a testament to the skill and vision of the ancient Greeks, and a reminder of the enduring power of art and architecture. Today, the Parthenon is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and ongoing restoration efforts aim to preserve what remains of this ancient wonder for future generations. The history of the Parthenon is not just a story of stone and marble, it is a story of people. It is the story of the Athenians who built it, the worshippers who prayed within its walls, the conquerors who transformed it, and the scholars who study it. It is a story that continues to unfold, as we strive to understand and preserve this remarkable monument. The Parthenon is more than just a building, it is a symbol of human achievement, a link between the past and the present, and a reminder of the enduring legacy of ancient Greece.